I'm Jim Clark, Visual Arts Manager here at Hopkins Center for the Arts, and we're with Chris Cinque to speak about her show, Beyond the Reach of Words. And Chris, you really set us up for a challenge with the title of the show, because here we are about to use words.
Exactly, right.
to delve into this wonderful body of work. Can you tell us about the inspiration for the work in the show?
Sure. It's two different series. One series is called Porteranzas, and those are the ones that are on Unstretched Canvas. And then the Lockport series are on the Stretched Canvas, the landscape view. And so the Porteranza series was first, and the Lockport came after that. So all of my work is based in color, and color as it relates to it has a lot of emotional content. So when I say beyond the reach of words, I really mean that. Like when I first started doing visual art, I didn't know what it was about, you know. And then as I spent more and more time doing it, I found out you have to know what it's about, and you have to be able to tell people what it's about. Otherwise, they're not going to get it. Which I don't totally agree with. I think that there's an understanding that can be had through just visual. Through the visual aspect, and that there are connections that are made through the heart, and you know that aren't about the left brain, that are not about analyzing and understanding through words. Because if you want to know about something through words, then just read a book.
That resonates with me quite a bit personally. But do you feel like do you feel any responsibility to draw people in? Sometimes I've used or heard people use to pull people into your tent. I know that with non-representational work, a lot of times viewers feel intimidated or maybe possibly insecure about looking at it, and so I do think that the using words, whether through a didactic or through this interaction, it helps to make it less intimidating. Do you feel any responsibility to that, or any desire, or are you do you welcome only the visual, and if people are going to maybe not take the time to engage, how do you feel about that?
I absolutely, there's nothing about this that's supposed to be like, oh, don't come near me. That's what the color is about. I think that people are drawn to color.
Yes.
I absolutely want the work to be welcoming and inviting and to bring people in. And because I've been challenged to come up with words about what it's about, then it deepens my own understanding of what it is I'm doing. So that's been very interesting, actually, that I've been doing everything instinctively and intuitively. And then if somebody says, well, what's this about? Then I have to, click into that other part of me. And it's very satisfying, really, to find out that there is something that's substantive in that way, that's verbal.
Chris, you say you use color as maybe to usher a viewer in, to seduce the viewer into your mindset or your view. How do you arrive at your color choices?
It's completely random. I mean, almost completely random. I mean, this piece is different from most of the, and I did this intentionally. So there was some consciousness about my color choices on this one. But most of them, I have boxes of paper, and I never throw anything away, even the tiniest strip and the littlest bit of scrap. I keep everything. And then I just start kind of pawing through, and so it's like I'll just start taking things out, and then I'll lay them out. So in terms of like the Lockport series, this was the problem that I set myself was to work on structures that are 3 times longer than they are wide, and that they would be broken into 5 sections, and they would be stacked colors. So that was a very conscious choice on my part, and then it's sort of like...
And it sounds mathemathalachical.
Yeah.
I mean, is there any root of math to it?
Well, just in regards of wanting things of balancing the space.
Sure.
I have a 25-year theater career, and we used to do an exercise called balancing the space. And so actors would be in different parts of the theater space and creating energy flows and things like that. So I didn't actually think about that until just right now, about the balancing that's going on. I'm looking for it at spatially, and if it's pleasing to me, then I get it kind of nailed down.
Sure.
So.
How did you arrive at that structure? Was that intuitive? Did you do sketches?
No, it was intuitive again.
Yeah.
I did sketches for the Porter Ranzis pieces. These are based on a square. So they have one square in them, sometimes more than one square, but there's a central square. And then the puzzle is to figure out how to fill in the rest of the space. So I would do drawings for these, and then I was very measuring on the canvas, because the drawings, of course, are like this, and then the canvases are various sizes. And then I would, I have a proportion wheel, which is weird because I was terrible at math, but I'm like interested in getting things kind of situated.
Yeah.
You know, like a kid will build with blocks. You know, you give them a bunch of blocks and they'll start, balancing and figuring out where they go and then knock it over or whatever. But so that's what this is for me. So the square is the central figure, and then everything else that happens is about balancing the space again. So that's pretty much what my work is about. So that's the logistics of it, but underneath all that is accessing or embodying an emotional landscape. And so there's those two kind of things going on. There's that kind of formulaic thing happening, but then there's this also of trying to get to the limbic brain and the kind of primal brain, that the place where memories start to disappear. They're always there still, but they're fragmented. I have a trauma in my childhood, and so for me, being able to access information is very hard because it all got kind of put away. It's over here. So I do end up working very instinctively and intuitively, and then I just trust that it's all an experiment. It'll work out the way it works out. I'm mostly self-taught. I've taken some classes. I've done workshops, but I'm not I don't have a degree or anything.
Sure.
At least in art or in theater. Both of those things have been things I've learned by reading. I'm an autodidact. I read a lot of, I look at a lot of work. I have various artists that I'm very drawn to, like Hannah Lorber, and she's somebody that I'm very, very taken with, who had trauma in her life. Her family had to escape Nazi Germany when she was a child, It's like, what did that do to her?
Sure.
So I can see that in the work, I can see that there's something going on there, and I didn't know, oh, she must be an escapee from Nazi Germany. It's sort of but I knew that something major had happened, and this is the way she's addressing it, And so that's what I do. I am addressing the material that I can't access consciously, which you would think would be oh, it should be kind of grim, but it's not. It's I mean, you can see how much color there is. It's very life affirming. Anyway. I don't know if I answered your question.
That and more. There seems, to me, an appeal to the work visually is that tension between the structure that you've set up for yourself and then the intuitive, the textural, the unexpected color choices, that push between the more organic and the more inorganic, as I see it. Regarding addressing trauma, does the work in this show embody that response to trauma, or do you speak in general about your art making process?
It's more generalized than that. It's not like, oh, this is what happened, this equals that. Yep. I don't think about it at all. It came about when people started saying, well, what are you doing here, and what is this about? So it wasn't like I was going, oh, I have trauma, let me go figure it out. That's what therapy's for. But it is a way in which I went, oh, I think this is somehow related.
Sure.
That children are drawn to lots of colors and lots of things that are unexpected.
Yep.
You know, they'll put things together like that an adult won't do because they're working out of their rational brain. So some of this might seem irrational, like why would you put that pink next to that orange, or you know, how come there's all these different blues? You know, so the reasoning is just that they visually work for me, and I just trust that, and I trust that I don't think about it ahead of time like I try to think like warm, cool, you know. I don't totally get all that, you know, but I'm trying to learn that part and try to add that to my balancing act, you know, like how will that help me figure out how to balance so I don't have to always rely only on instinct, you know, that I can use more of the tools that most artists do.
Sure. Lockport is on Stretched Canvas, and Port Erasmus is on Unstretched Canvas. Can you speak to the choice there? What drove that?
Before I worked on the Unstretched Canvas, I was working on paper. So I would buy big rolls of paper, and then I would cut the sizes that I want. And so I was making these large works that were, I don't want to say they're abstract because that means something is being abstracted. So
right.
They are non-objective in that they're about themselves. They're not referencing something. They're not about something else. They're about what they are. They're about their materials and their colors and their shapes. So I started with the paper, and then I thought, paper has great things with it. You know, you can. When I take the paper off the roll, I'll put it in the bathtub. You know, and I'll just try to take some of the sizing out, and then I'll staple it to the wall, and then I'll, you know, so it has a little bit of a limitation in terms of how do you hang it, or
right.
What do you know. So I would just hammer them to the wall. You know, I've had some shows where I just go in with a hammer and let's just tack it up here. I don't want the work to be framed. It can be framed. So that it seemed like a logical thing to go from paper to canvas. And there's also kind of a practical element, like if you have a bunch of stretched canvas, where are you going to store all that?
Yeah.
I mean, my Port Aransas series is like 35 pieces, and it takes up this much space. So I have it in that way. I also like the textile aspect of it, that when you put it on a stretcher, it changes what it is,
yeah.
You know, and it makes it. I like the reference to quilting. The quilters of Gee's Bend were a big influence for me. You know, anything that's related to fiber arts. I'm not a fiber artist, but I'm interested in what that is and how women have tended in that direction. Because like the quilters in Gee's Bend were making beautiful art objects, but they were providing comfort for their family. You know, so they were providing warmth and, you know, beauty and
sure.
things for their families. And so I like that use of the everyday. So while you're not going to like put this on your bed or anything, it sort of reverberates to that, you know, of a quilt. So then to go from that to the stretched canvas, I don't know, because I'll work against the wall in my studio. I staple either the paper or the canvas to the wall, and then I have a very hard surface that I can work on, because this work is very physical. You know, I use a lot of matte medium, and I'm gluing things, and I'm pressing, and I'm brayering, and I'm pushing, and I'm, you know, and then I'm making marks, and you know, and I've always felt like a stretched canvas kind of does this, and I'm like, it's just too, whatever. I don't like that. I don't like the way it feels. So when I started working on these, I created little inserts that I would have of wood blocks, and then I have the same kind of surface. But then I also have a different thing. It's much more formal. You know, there's a formality to a stretched canvas that I'm just sort of interested in, just as a variety. You know, because I've been making collages now and these are all collages. I've been making collages for about, I don't know, 15 plus years. So.
Related to the medium aspect, they are all identified as mixed media collage. Could you provide any additional insight into what materials are your go-tos?
Sure. I love going and looking at the paper drawers in art supply stores.
Yeah.
And I like the way they feel. I like not the machine-made ones that have a lot of, machine-added things. I like the natural fibers. I've made paper myself. I'm not that interested in doing that. But I like the availability that there is of different kinds of fibers. I found a really cool papyrus fiber once I haven't been able to replicate. It was a deep blue. I mean, it was just like gorgeous. It's like, wow, I want that. So I'll buy a lot of paper and then I'll just have it. I have things separated. Now here's my green thing. Let me see what kind of greens I have, and then I usually tear rather than cut because I don't like the clean edge. I like the raggedy edge or the irregular edge. So I have a variety of papers that are available. I also save things that come in the mail, and I like to wash paper. If they're too hard, I'll stick them in the sink and get them wet and apply them that way. And then they become more malleable, and I just like the way that feels. So and layering is very important in this work. You can see in it that. Especially in this one, it has there's a whole bunch of layers. It doesn't provide thickness, but it does provide texture. And so I'll put something down, and then I'll add something over it, and then and I use matte medium as a layer because it does provide a little bit of a buildup. It has
physical depth.
It has some physical depth, yeah, and in the same way, I sort of aspire towards encaustic, although I'm not interested in it. I don't want to be an encaustic worker, artist, but I love. I think it's interesting I said worker instead of artist because I do believe that it's important work to do. So what happens with the surface of encaustics? It's so, there's a depth to it and a dreaminess to it that I'm very drawn to. And I've found that by doing matte medium layers and then maybe, scoring through it and then adding paper over it and washes and different things. So I do build up the surface. And then you can peer through it. I know when I saw Julie Maratu's work for the first time, I just loved how it was like stuff behind stuff behind stuff, and so I aspire to that in my work of getting that thing that's behind that you can't quite see, but it's resonant, has a resonance to it.
Which seems to be a visual analog or a visual metaphor for the addressing trauma through your work.
Yeah. There's a lot of layers that are like behind almost membranes, and things get stored in different parts of the brain. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score, and while the conscious mind, it's a protective mechanism. The conscious mind won't attach in the conscious mind, but it's not like forgotten, but it's put in a different place. And so it's like, well, where is that, and what is that? And you can't quite see it, and you can't quite feel it, but something's there, And then you have to kind of use your dream mind to, like, figure out, like, what is this about? I don't know, and I can't say, but I got it, So I'm interested in that kind of discourse that happens. It's not verbal.
Does the color come primarily from the paper itself or exclusively from the paper itself, or do you also add any paint?
I use a lot of paint. I have lots of paints, and I use very thin paints usually. I'll water them down a lot so I get more of a glaze than a paint buildup. Sometimes I will put it on thick, just because that's a different element, and it has a more of a, it can become almost graphic, when you do that. But yeah, I do thin layers so that you can see through them. And sometimes I'll do something that's much more opaque so that you can't see through it, you know, so it's like a wall rather than a window. Yeah.
You had mentioned how you emphasize the work aspect and worker as maybe a synonym for artists. How do you see the place or function of an artist in our society?
I think the cultures that are most successful are ones in which art is an integrated element in that culture. And it's not like the artist is doing the work and then the people are growing the food, you know, I mean, or, you know, taking care of the children. It's like, it's all part of the same thing. You know, you build a house and then you have to like put something on it to make it special, you know, and that's the art of it, you know, that's the individualized thing, or the cultural referential thing that can be made by repeated symbols that are passed down through generations, you know. So I think our culture, if you can call American culture a culture, because it is so disparate and so vast, the greatest problem is, one of the greatest problems, there are so many, is that art is merchandise, you know, and the immense amount of money that goes towards like successful artists and the bidding that happens with all that, it's like appalling to me. It's like, oh my God, that's not what it should be about, you know, like I bought this for this and I sold it for that, you know, like why are you selling it?
What should it be about?
It shouldn't be a marketplace item. I mean, I think artists need to, I don't know how it works out financially. There needs to be an integration that is not about like commercialization. You know, that there was a woman in Nova Scotia, I think. There was a film made of her, and I meant to look up her name. I can't remember what it is. She painted her whole house inside and out. You know, she couldn't stop doing it. You know, she was living with a man who was horrible to her, because I saw the film. But she painted everything. You know, she couldn't stop painting all the surfaces. You know, and now this is like a shrine that people come to because they're so moved by the way in which she was documenting something about herself. You know, and there are different cultures, different in Africa, in which, you know, the places where people live will be highly decorated, and the clothing will be highly decorated, and the body will be highly decorated. You know, there's a way in which it's so integrated. It's not a separate thing that you're going to hang on the wall. I think hanging art on the wall is great. I'm not opposed to that. But
I was about to take it off.
Yeah, you could do that and just wear it. But just integration, you know, so that it's not like you're a banker and you're an artist. You know, why can't people be more than one thing and have an opportunity to express this essential part of themselves? You know, I really, you know, I used to see this bumper sticker, "Art saves lives," and I go, oh, come on, you know, because I had adopted the whole Western notion of what that is. You know, that's pretentious, but in my life, it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
I have always been an artist. As a kid, I was drawing, or I was making music, or I was, you know, I was doing something that was creative, and and I've always done that, you know. So I just think that we need to think more about how to make that happen. You know, one of the first things that gets cut in school programs is the art department, or the art classes, or, you know, like, well, that's non-essential material, and I think it is. So that's the place the artist has in the world for me, is that people should all have an opportunity to do it.
Do you think that that's the most challenging aspect of working as an artist, is rubbing up against that compartmentalized view of art and art making, or what's the most difficult thing for you?
For me, especially when I was a theater artist, it was this feeling that I was a fraud, that I had no business writing and directing and acting in plays. You know, like I should be doing something important. You know, I should be doing something that made more money. I should be doing something that I was trained to do, because I wasn't trained to do it. I went to school a little bit, but I really hated it, so I left. And I learned by doing it.
Yeah.
And so that was a burden for me to carry, is that I'm a fraud, you know, and all my energy and my whole life focus was about doing something that I felt that I was a fraud, you know. So, and I know that was because I didn't have the support of the culture in which I grew up in or lived in. And it came from my own family. I mean, one of my grandmothers wanted to be a dancer. My other grandmother had a beautiful singing voice and could have had a singing career. My father had a gorgeous singing voice. But they all, you know, working class people, they had to work and have families. And so that part got smushed. And so for me come along, you know, it's like, well, I'm just going to do this, you know. I'm not gonna do this other thing I'm supposed to do. I just carried that, like, how dare you? Who do you think you are?
Sure.
You know. So for me personally, that has been the biggest struggle. I haven't minded being poor. I haven't minded, you know, not having the things that people want often. And now that I'm retired, I don't care. I do care if my work sells. I want my work to be out in the world, you know. But I don't need it to be in order to, you know, buy bread, you know. So, and I think that then is the greatest struggle for artists who are still in that, who need money for their work, you know. How do you do that when it's so imbalanced that either you're making gazillion dollars or you're making nothing, you know? And so you have to do the business thing, you have to have photographs taken, and you have to have a blog, you know. It's like, I'm not doing any of that. I don't want to do it. I like doing this, not because I feel like, you know, I'm going to get something from it, but because it's fun to talk about the work, and it's fun to have, and it's interesting to have other people have access to this process in a bigger way than just me working at home in my studio. So.
Chris, thank you so much for sharing your work with us and our community.
Absolutely, thank you. I love being here. I'm so looking forward to the opening tonight, and thanks for having me.
Fantastic. And thanks too for using words to get at some of the things that are beyond words in the show.
Well, sure, you got to do it. Even I know that now. So.
I'm Jim Clark, Visual Arts Manager here at Hopkins Center for the Arts. We were just speaking with Chris Cinque about her work on display in her show Beyond the Reach of Words.